Now, if you're anything like me, you've probably built a couple computers over the past few years, and with these computers, you might have had some parts that just simply didn't make the cut. It could have been that they were underperforming, or maybe you just bought too many parts that you thought you needed. Whatever the case was, you decided, oh well, maybe I'll just try to sell this part, and when that didn't work, you decided to just toss this part in a box to collect dust for years to come, but in the end, they all ended up being scrap parts. So I thought I'd go ahead and do something about this problem today and build a computer completely comprised of scrap parts. So let's go ahead and get to it. So before we get to the build, we have to go over all the parts that we're going to be using. So let's go ahead and start with the CPU. So starting with the CPU, we're going to be going with the Intel Pentium G4400. Now, a little fun fact about this dual core processor is it was actually the first part that I bought for my first custom build. I got this for around 40 bucks at the time, which is probably the main reason that I bought it, but you can get one of these for around 7 to 10 bucks nowadays, but it was pretty good and I got a lot of use out of it. Now for the motherboard, I was originally going to be going with this broken B75 board because at the time I thought I could fix it, but I guess I overestimated my abilities because that did not end up happening. So I had to go ahead and scour the internet and find another really cheap board that was compatible with all of our other parts. So I guess this isn't a fully 100% scrap build because I did need to end up buying a part. So it is what it is, but let's go ahead and take a look at the board we will be using. So the board I ended up going with is actually the HP ProDesk 400 G3 SFF, which is probably the cheapest board I was able to find with the H4 socket type, so it will be compatible with our Pentium, but you know, sadly I did have to spend $20 whole on this really cheap board, but all the parts are going to be compatible, so I guess it all works out in the end. At least it's still around the same size as a mini ATX board, so it still will be able to fit with all the other components that we have. Now for the GPU, we're going to be going with the GT710. It's probably been a while since y'all heard the letters GT in front of a graphics card name, but this was taken from my first ever pre-built that I got, and it was horrible. So don't expect much from this graphics card right here. But at least this is the 2 GB variant of that card with the 2 gigs of GDDR5 memory, but still, like I said, don't expect much. Now for the RAM, we have 2 sticks of 4 GB each to add up to that 8 gigs total, with both these sticks clocking around 2400 megahertz each. Nothing too special about these, probably pulled them out of an office PC a couple years ago. Now for the CPU cooler, not too sure on what brand it is, seeing as it has no identifying marks, but I'm pretty sure it used to light up some different colors a couple years ago. It doesn't do that anymore, but you know, it probably has the same performance as a regular stock cooler, so it'll get the job done nonetheless. Now for storage, and probably our worst part in this entire build, we have a Toshiba hard drive taken from a laptop from 2014. Yeah, guys, 2014. It's not going to perform too well, and the read and write speeds are probably horrible, but you know, it'll get the job done, hopefully. Now for the power supply, we have an Apevia. I'm not too sure on how to say the name. I'm going to say Apevia 550 watt non-modular power supply, probably taken from a pre-built a couple years ago. Rightfully so. This is probably the first part you should always replace in one of those, because yeah, never trust those. Look, they got the impact font on it. That's never a good sign. But you know, you got to do what you got to do, and that's what we're going to be doing today for the scrap build. Now for the case, you probably weren't expecting this, or maybe you were, but you know, I'm pretty sure the category of this case is probably like a test bench, but as you can see, I 3D printed this because I didn't have any cases just laying around since those are pretty easy to sell, and I also didn't want to go out and find one on like Craigslist or anything like that because, you know, why would I want to do that? But you know, this is the case we're going to be using, and it should be able to fit all of our parts pretty nicely. So now let's waste no more time and get to the build. Now that the build was finally done, it was time to power on this bad boy, and not with a power button because we don't have one. And just like that, we were able to get our system to boot up, and ignore all these errors, I'm sure they don't mean anything. But now, it was time to finally install Windows. After one very lengthy Windows installation, I finally was able to get into the computer and download some Steam games as well as 3D Mark so we can go ahead and run a benchmark. I then decided to go ahead and start out with some Counter-Strike 2, but as you can see, this didn't really end too well seeing as the game wouldn't even load. I'm gonna go ahead and say it though, just another reason why they should have just kept the original CSGO. After failing to run Counter-Strike 2, I decided to go ahead and try my luck running GTA 5, but as you'll soon see, this didn't go too well either. Well, this time we were able to actually load into the game. After pressing story mode, it would then be met with a loading screen that would last nearly 10 to 30 minutes each time, which was not the most fun to wait for. After changing all the graphics settings to the lowest that they could possibly go, I was still sadly met with a very long loading screen. However, after recording, I was eventually able to load into story mode, but when playing, I can assure y'all that the performance was nothing to brag about, as y'all soon see. But now it was finally time to run a 3D Mark Time Spy test, and this is probably the slowest that I've ever seen the screen move, but I'm gonna go ahead and skip over this so y'all can just see the results. After looking at the results, they're about as good as I expected. We achieved a graphics score of 217 and a CPU score of 1576, so not too good. And then looking at the graphics test, we can see how many frames we were able to get. We were not even able to break 2 frames per second. After looking at the horrible graphics test results, I can assure you that the CPU ones are better, but not by much. Despite all of its shortcomings though, it was finally time to go ahead and mint this bad boy by slapping on that sticker to let us know this was truly a scrap PC. But now it's time for the cinematic shots. But yeah guys, that is going to be the end of our scrap PC build. I had so much fun building this, and I hope y'all enjoyed watching it as well. And I hope a lot of y'all were not expecting this to be an actually, good system, because it's made of scrap parts. These are parts that are not being used for a good reason. But if you wanted to make something like that playable, you could easily just replace the hard drive with an SSD and get a cheap GPU for around like 50 bucks. And that thing would be able to play like most esports titles, or maybe even most titles, who knows. But that's going to be the end of the video. I hope y'all enjoyed. If you did, feel free to drop a like, comment, and subscribe. And that's going to be it for me. Peace out.